My name is Joe Stillwell. I'm here to discuss two, maybe three, close encounters that I had in 2011. The first of which involved a craft that came up behind my house. This was in March, actually March 1st, 2011. I had gone to bed at a reasonable hour that night. I have a habit when I return to my room of going to a window straight away from the doorway as I enter, and the window faces west. I went to that window to look out at the night sky. I wanted to see if I could see the constellation Orion. The night was crystal clear. I had barely caught sight of the constellation when I detected movement in the sky to the right. I turned my head and saw this structure moving toward the rear of my house. Initially, I could not determine how far away it was. It was high enough in the sky, and there were no clouds, and it wasn't by any buildings because of its height, that there was no reference for me to compare this thing. So I didn't know if it was quite small and close or quite large and far away, but it was coming toward my house, descending very slowly. It was moving maybe 10 miles an hour. It was shaped like a brick. It was solid black, seamless, no windows or doors. I detected no disturbance of the air around this thing, indicative of a propulsion source reliant on combustion. It was descending slowly as it got nearer to where I was. The bottom of this thing was ringed with very large lights. They were red and green. They were shaped like footballs around the entire perimeter of the bottom of this thing, but they were much larger, very, very large, but shaped like footballs. They were red and green, with every other one being red or green. There were four equally spaced points around that perimeter of lights that were not lit. And the lights went on and off, as you would imagine the lights on an old theater marquee. So it appeared that the lights were running around the perimeter of the bottom of the craft. They were running clockwise. I watched just in amazement as this thing came closer and eventually got incredibly low as it came up to my house. And it started to go behind my house, and I pressed my head, my face up against the window to watch as long as I could from the position I was in. I live in a two-story house, so as I was looking out of the window, I was barely looking up at it. It was almost level with the roof line of my house. And at that point, I could also compare the size of this thing. I estimate that this thing was at least 4 times the size of my two-story house. There's a bedroom on the other side, and I wanted to look out the window on the far side of that room to watch this thing fly away. I only managed one step, and I stopped at the foot of my bed. I hadn't tried or wanted to stop, I just stopped. I was completely paralyzed, unable to do anything. I just was frozen in that position, standing upright. I was just saying to myself, go. Just go forward, move. Come on, it's going to fly away and you're going to miss it. Go, move. And as that was happening in my head, I suddenly started to come out of my body. I came out through my face. But I only got a short distance out, and it seems that I got stuck. And I could feel that I was tugging to pull free. I label that my awareness. My awareness came through my face. And at some point, after a few tugs, I did. I broke free, and I came out of my body to in front of where it was standing. I only had two realizations in that state of being. The first was comfort. It was absolute perfection. I have never felt such a balance of everything. It could not be surpassed. It was pure comfort. The second realization was this vastness of nothing, just on and on and on. It just was it just seemed like a place that went forever. Almost as soon as I was sitting down and was trying to talk myself into getting up to move, I was struck by this searing point of heat directly in the center of my chest. When it struck me, I immediately lost almost all of my energy. My forearms and forehead, water just started coming out of my arms and my head, like a profuse sweat. The heat was only for an instant and radiated across and down my torso. But it caused that reaction as I fell forward. The room just lit brilliantly with white light. Coming from my left, seemed to be coming through the window next to where I was sitting. The entire room just flooded brilliant, brilliant white. I immediately lost the just little bit of energy that I had left in my body. That immediately was gone, and my torso fell forward. My arms kind of fell off my thighs, and my torso and head went down between my knees. And my view was just of the floor and these incredibly dark shadows that were being cast by my lower legs from this brilliant illumination in the room. At that moment, I felt, the only way I can describe this, it felt as if my skeleton had been removed from my body. It felt exactly like that. It felt as if I had no internal structure left. And as I was slumped forward, it seemed as if I was just liquid. I felt like, I just felt like water, like a liquid. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to kind of splash over the edge of the bed and cascade down onto the floor into a puddle on the floor. And at that instant, a thought came into my head. They are at the window. Don't look. And in that instant, I was lifted up and kind of plopped over onto my left side onto the bed. My feet, my lower legs and my feet were still on the floor. And they immediately felt as if they weighed 1,000 pounds. I mean, I could feel the weight of them, and my eyes closed. Not a conscious move on my part, they just closed. And my initial thought was, my feet are going to go through the floor. They're too heavy. The floor is going to give way. And then my thought was, I need to get my feet. I was very concerned about my feet. So I tried to move, and I could not. And I struggled and struggled for quite a long period of time, trying to move. And I could not, and I couldn't open my eyes. And at this point, I was just wondering why my feet were so heavy, why I couldn't open my eyes, why I couldn't move my hands. I was just very curious at my disability. I was very focused on retrieving my feet. I was concerned they may be gone. I struggled and finally managed to move the index finger of my right hand. Now, both of my hands, when I fell over, had fallen near the edge of the bed, so they were near my knees. I eventually managed to move the index finger of my right hand, and struggled, and I could not move my hand with just that single digit. I struggled some more and eventually managed to move my right thumb. And with those two poorly functioning fingers, I managed to touch my legs, and I kind of crawled those two fingers up onto the nearest leg, which was my left, and I grabbed a hold of the left knee, and I pulled as hard as I could, and it did not move. At that point, I remember thinking that my feet were gone. It didn't frighten me, but it concerned me. Now I tried to move my left hand, and I managed to eventually move the index finger of the left hand. I could not move that hand with that single digit either. I managed eventually to move my left thumb, and by grabbing the covers on the bed, the sheet, I pinched and kept pulling and pinched and pulled until I moved my left hand over to my right, and I grabbed my right wrist. My right hand was still on my left upper leg. I locked both of my hands and pulled as hard as I could, and very slowly my left foot started to come up off the floor. It took quite a long time, but eventually my leg dragged up onto the bed, and I released the knee. Having that success, I knew I could recover my right foot, which still was a concern for me. I struggled again for a very lengthy period of time, managing to get both of my hands in that same position over on my right knee, and again pulled. And very slowly again, that leg came up onto the bed and came up onto the top of my left lower leg. And once on the bed, I just let go, and my hands fell to in front of me near the right edge of the bed. I was never able to open my eyes during this ordeal, and I was only able to move those four fingers after the light flooded through the window. There was something happening around me. I don't know what, but those were two realizations that I had. The light is still here, and there's something going on in the room. And at that point, I lost consciousness, because when I next opened my eyes, it was the following morning. It was only then, that next morning, that the craft in the sky became my primary concern and realization. And I immediately got out of bed, went over to my desk. I was very agitated. I was not myself. I don't drink coffee, but I think it would be like if you drank several cups of caffeinated coffee. I was just very, very shaky and agitated. I just seemed not to be myself. I grabbed a pencil and paper on the desk and very quickly drew a kind of a crude drawing of what I had seen in the sky. I made some very quick notes about the drawing, and immediately went out of my room to go tell my wife what had happened. So I went to her room, and I just stepped in the doorway. I didn't go in. I don't know why. I just stepped in the doorway, and she was awake and sitting up in the bed. I think she might have been looking at the paper or reading something. And I just started spewing this stuff. And I immediately realized that I didn't sound normal. I wasn't speaking as I'm speaking now. It was just a very odd pattern of speech. And I only got a couple of sentences out, and one of them was, there was this giant thing in the sky that came behind the house. And when I started to describe that thing in the sky, she chuckled. And she's a very caring woman. We've been married forever. And I know she wasn't laughing at me. I think it was the delivery, because even I recognized that something was wrong and I wasn't talking right. But when that happened, I recognized that no matter what I said from that point on, it probably wasn't going to be believed.